Okay. It looks like we're live. So definitely give us a shout out in the chat if you can hear and see myself and our special guest. There's a lot of people here today. We're so excited for this conversation. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Adda Birnir. I'm the founder and CEO of Skillcrush, and I'm here with the amazing Kerry Hannon, and I'm going to give her a more formal introduction in a second. But before I do, I just wanted to take a couple minutes to do a little bit of housekeeping. The plan is for Kerry and I to have a conversation and then for us to take questions from the audience at the end. And what I would love for you all to do, we have some questions that you guys submitted ahead of time, which we will be addressing. It's actually, they align perfectly with what Kerry was going to talk about anyway, so that's great. But in addition to that, if you have something that comes up during the talk that you want to make sure that we get to, please submit a question to the Ask a Question module, and then it can be upvoted and all that jazz. And I will also say there's a lot of people here today, which is amazing. That's going to make it really hard for Kerry and I to keep up with the chat, but I do have team members. I know Sarah and Emily are both in the chat who can answer any questions that come up as they come up. And with that, I think we can get started because it's 3:02 and I want to get into all the content. So it is such a great pleasure for me to get to introduce Kerry Hannon. And am I saying your last name right? I realize.
Oh, you are. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. So Kerry is amazing. I love this term that you have, workplace futurist. She is an expert in career transitions, retirement, finance. I mean, the list goes on. She is a senior contributor to Yahoo Finance, and she's also she's written for a whole host of amazing publications, including, the New York Times, and I'm looking Forbes and a whole bunch of things like that. So she's has lots of accolades, but I just want to speak personally from my perspective, because although it's awesome that you have written for the New York Times, that's not why I invited you. I invited you because I personally have been trying to learn more about ageism in the workforce, the impact that all of the sort of crazy changes in the last couple of years have been having on the on people who are in the workforce, and just, age and sort of issues around career transitions and fear around, am I too late to do a career transition? What are the specific implications of doing a career transition at 30 versus 40 versus 50 versus 60? And I've been trying to educate myself a lot on those topics and reading a lot about it and learning a lot. And I'll just say that's how I found you. And I just loved what you had to say. I thought between like the articles I read that you did and the webinars that you've done that I watched, I just thought that you had just a really thoughtful and sensitive and compassionate and also totally practical approach to all of that. And also I should mention, sorry, I just saw it in the back of your thing. You have written a whole bunch of books, and most recently In Control at 50 Plus, which is great and totally on topic for what we're talking about today. But anyway, I just want to say thank you. And I'm just so excited to get to share you and your message and sort of what you have to say on this topic with my audience, because I think that everyone who is a part of the Skillcrush community is undertaking a career change in some form, and we're all adults. And I think basically what I have experienced is that every adult from ages 20 to whatever age you are tends to have concerns about, am I too late to be making this career change? So anyways, I'll stop talking now. Kerry, it's so nice to have you here. Thank you for being here. I don't know if you want to say a couple words.
I'm thrilled to be here. I mean, thank you so much. Skillcrush is the coolest, and what a community you have. I mean, this is really, really important. And it's wonderful to have so many people come together with this, really desire to learn how to get better at this. It's just really, really important. So thank you so much for the invitation. I'm just thrilled to be here.
Yes. So I'd love to just dive right in, and I would love, I think that you have a really good perspective. I think we've all sort of lived it in real time, what has happened in the last couple of years, but I feel like you have a really good sort of, 10,000 foot view and understanding of it that you write and talk about. And I would love to sort of hear you characterize it for everybody who's listening. What has happened and what does it mean, kind of?
Great. So the new book that I wrote that came out this year is called In Control at 50 Plus, How to Succeed in the New World of Work. But it really is not just for people over 50. It's for anyone, because what had happened as we came through the pandemic, we had profound changes in the workplace that aren't going back, right? So in this book, I identify 5 major trends. And some of them, yeah, some of them started pre-pandemic and just lit up during the time that we went through. And of course, we're still kind of in it, right? We're not exactly emerged yet. But so let me just tick them off kind of quickly. And the first one is remote work, right? Remote work is here to stay. Now, this is something that used to be you had to kind of beg your supervisor or your manager to work from home and have that flexibility. And, they kind of didn't think you were actually working, and they weren't sure because they couldn't, out of sight, out of mind was another issue. So we all kind of grappled with that. But when everyone had to go home, they realized that, yeah, guess what? People actually are productive, and the performance was great. And it was a cost saver for many employers if they didn't have to have office space, right? It gave them that opportunity. And the great things about remote work, and I hope we can dig into it a bit more, is it really does tremendous things to fight ageism. If you're not sitting in the workplace being judged subliminally by your cover, next to somebody a couple decades younger than you, it goes a long way to fighting ageism. And I think also if you have issues with health issues that make the commute hard, if you can work from home, it's fabulous. It just opens the door. But in general, remote work has made the global workplace available to all of us. It's now you don't have to necessarily work with the company down the road or the one in your town. You have, yes, it had started pre-pandemic, and certainly younger workers who are digital natives knew they could do their jobs, not sitting in an office every day. So this is a great thing. The second big trend is contract work has exploded. There are pros and cons of contract work, but the important thing to know is that the number of opportunities to do, part-time projects for a couple of months, what have you, is just like taken off. And again, the important thing about this is if you're trying to keep your resume alive and you're in between jobs or whatever, this gives you the opportunity to continue to work. Or if you're older and you've stepped out of the workplace, maybe taken an early retirement during the pandemic, but you want to keep working a little bit, this gives you a way, it's an avenue in order to keep earning some income as a safety net. So contract work, the bad parts of it, and again, I'm happy to go into it deeper, is that guess what? You're not getting paid benefits. So
Right.
it's a very good thing for the employer, not so good if you're under 65 and you want to have your health insurance and you need a employer provided retirement plan, then that's on you. So that makes it a little more difficult. The third big trend, entrepreneurship. Yep, it had started pre-pandemic, but it really has just taken off at all ages because you know what? When we were home and everyone, we weren't out, now we're out a bit more, but you had that time to do the soul searching, that MRI about, why am I doing this? What is it that I really want to be doing? Maybe you got burned out having to work from home and managing family and everything during the pandemic. And you just realized that maybe you should be spending time doing something you've always wanted to do or something that truly is part of your mission. And what also, gosh, we all lost people we loved during COVID and from COVID during the pandemic. And you realize, sort of how quickly things can change and you needed to grab hold of things. The next big transition is career transition. So the same thing applies to entrepreneurship. People saying, hey, I've always wanted to do this. Is people said, hey, you know what? I want to do this. I want to take my skills, redeploy them, and go in this other direction. So it's not reinventing yourself. But again, people used to say, especially if you're over 50, they'll be like, hey, do you really have the runway to do that? Wow, you're really quite a, risk taker. You're a big outlier if you want to change careers. Today, people at all ages have decided I am taking control of my working life. I'm going to do work that's meaningful to me, and I'm going to seek out flexibility in doing that. So the career transition piece, and the final little piece, and then we can get into more questions, is learning. Okay. Virtual learning absolutely exploded. And the opportunities to learn, you didn't have to go get a master's degree. You didn't have to go back and get an extensive amount. Nothing wrong with that. But the ability to cherry pick and jump in and add a new skill, the opportunities to find education online and really great education just took off. And so now we have this chance that education, it's non-negotiable now. Everything is changing too fast. You can't sit back and not continue to add to your skill set all the time, no matter what field you're in. And because of during the pandemic, the virtual options just became a real reality. It was no longer a dream, but in fact, we can find these things, even simple places like LinkedIn Learning, but Skillcrush, we've got it all, right? It's really, and YouTube even, there are great videos out there that you can learn things. So, I mean, there's good, wonderful opportunities. We can go into more, but those are the big trends I see emerging from the pandemic that are here to stay, and they really allow people to take control of their futures.
Yeah, that's sort of what I was going to ask, is sort of the net on this. It sounds positive to me, right? It seems like people have more opportunities. What's your feeling? Like, it seems like that's your sense of it too.
I tend to be, have kind of like my, kind of an upbeat kind of gal. So I like to see this as an opportunity. I honestly do. I think that having the ability to reach out to employers across the world is something that we really didn't have so much before. And the ability that we've all proven that we can navigate our work remotely from home offices, we've gotten the digital skills going. So the fact is we can do that. I'm a believer that hybrid is good. I like connecting with people, and the younger you are, the more important it is to have FaceTime and actually have that opportunity to build that loyalty and make those friendships in a workplace. But I do see all of these trends as very positive. There's, always, another side to things, but nothing that really would make me say, these are not good trends. These are excellent trends.
Yeah, I'll speak to, just the remote work aspect of it. It has profoundly changed what we're able to offer our students, because before, the limiting factor for us when we were helping students get work was location. So they were limited to a certain degree by what was available to them in sort of a commutable radius. And it's, like, anyone who's listening knows that now we offer something that's called a job guarantee, which is basically that we literally guarantee that we'll help you find a job. And the reason we were able to do that is because the opportunities just like exploded. And we've placed people in positions. I can think of like one student who's taken an in-person position. And like a lot of them are like, yeah, they're taking jobs in Massachusetts, but they live in Las Vegas, or they're taking a job in San Francisco, but they're living in Mississippi. And yeah, anyway, so I just want to say that we see this having a profound effect on the opportunities that our students have in a really incredible way. So we're really excited about it, about that aspect. Yeah. So I guess I would love to if we can just go right for, the heart of the matter, which is sort of like, how do we as workers of all ages sort of approach, I think for better or for worse, we all have internalized a lot of these, what are ultimately ageist ideas around, like I can't as an older worker do this, that, or the other. And how would you advise somebody? I feel like what I hear from you is that like it's totally on trend to be whatever age and career you're transitioning. So you're in good company, but that doesn't necessarily, although that's like factually accurate, that doesn't necessarily like sort of address our feeling state of feeling like I'm too old to be doing this, et cetera, et cetera. How should we be thinking about it?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because a lot of the whole job seeking bit comes down to believing in yourself and having sort of a vision of what kind of work you want to do and what you're good at. A lot of us don't even realize what our best skills are because we take them for granted. It's something that we've always done. We accept it for what it is, but it's a process, and it sounds sort of woo woo, and you've heard this before, but you need to sit down and do that deep dive into what your skills are, your hard skills, your soft skills, what you love to do, what was the first job you ever had, and why did you love that job so much? And what was it that you could tease out there that you might be able to find in the work you're going to do next? And, allow yourself to dream a little bit. These sorts of things, if you're not even sure, one of the technique a lot of people say is to reach out and ask people who know you well or who have worked with you what some of your what you do, your best skills are, or what you're known for. And that helps a little bit. And people usually are honest with you. I like saying, go back if you have them, old performance reviews. That sort of reminds you of, oh yeah, yeah, and so you start getting this positive vibe from things that you remind yourself of. So you kind of pull out of that little rut. But then the idea when you're reaching out and you're seeking for something new, again, it's easy to be a self-doubter and not quite sure if you can make that move. And so everything you can do to sort of add to, you want to have the skill set. You don't necessarily need to know every single thing. These job postings, it's a dream list, right? So you need to have the core ones. I like to tell people to go to LinkedIn and look at what some of the people who are doing the jobs they want, what sort of background they have and what kind of certificates or degrees, and get a little bit of an idea of what it is that you might want to add this or that. But the key is being resilient and being willing to learn new things. A lot of us just shut down. We're like, oh, well, it's too hard, but it's not too hard. It's opening up your mind to learning new things. And so those are just some easy ways to get started. But things like, say, for example, right, say you wanted to be an entrepreneur. You're like, oh, I've always wanted to start this business. So the first thing you would need to do is say, why me? Why now? Why this, product or service? Okay, why is there a need for you in the workplace? And that's really important. But you need to do things like job shadowing and volunteering, getting out and trying to do the job a little bit. But it's important to kind of figure it out. Like, how do I fit into the universe here? And why is it that I want to do this? And when I ask for in that situation, I've written books about Never Too Old to Get Rich, about midlife entrepreneurs. And I said, one of the questions was, what would you have done differently? And almost all of them said, if they hadn't already had it, they wish they had more sales experience. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. So that could be one easy step you could do, is just ramp up a little bit of sales savvy. And if it's not that, it's simply taking a public speaking course or an improv class or, any Toastmasters, something that makes you get up and talk about yourself. Because even if you hire someone to do your marketing for you, you have to be selling your product. So I hope that's kind of just a broad example of being an entrepreneur, but what it means is you need to always be seeking that piece of education and getting excited about that.
Yeah. I think what I love about what you're saying, that I always try to say, is that I love that you're focusing it on what you're excited about. Because, like, we often get questions from people who are considering learning technical skills and transitioning. And their question is, how do I know if I'm going to be good at this? And I feel like what they're asking is sort of implicitly like, do I have the math brain, or do I have the whatever? You know what I mean? And the reality is, from our perspective, what we see is that it's not about sort of like any kind of like genetic predisposition. It's just about excitement and interest. And the more excited and interested and invested in, for in our instance, like technology, in your example, entrepreneurship, let's say, that you are, the more you're going to, like, the more time you're going to put into it, and the more sort of reps you're going to do and practice you're going to put into it. And that's ultimately what actually makes you skilled, is just keeping at it, right?
That's so perfect. Yeah, you captured it perfectly. That's exactly what it's. That curiosity is the willingness to put in the time. And if you're not passionate about it, and that word is overused, I realize it, but it's that's going to keep you getting up and trying and doing more. The other piece of that, just to kind of sidetrack slightly, but not that much, is I encourage people to, write down have a mission statement. Write down, what is your mission? Companies aren't the only ones that need to have missions. People have missions. Mm-hmm. And so if you know what you stand for and what it is that matters to you, and it's short, but when you have that, then that sort of directs you to the kind of companies you want to look for work at, right? Or clients that you might want to have. And if you believe in that company's mission, or that nonprofits, or whatever that is that you're applying to, it comes off. I mean, people love it when you love what they do and you really care about it, and it's part of your mission too. You can wear that on your sleeve. And honestly, that is a great way to get a company interested in your hiring manager, because it makes them feel good about their job. But also, it's true. It's not something you're making up. It just comes out of you.
Yeah. And I think that also the thing is that, like, when you have that, then it's like when you have that motivation, then you're so well set up to overcome any obstacle, right? Like it's like I think what you're ultimately advocating is like there people, and we all do this, like, you know, nobody should feel embarrassed or shameful or like they're bad for having these inclinations, because like this is like human nature, right? We all have this thing of like, I'm not enough. I'm going to look at myself and decide that like I don't have what it takes, like yada, yada, yada. But the reality is that like nobody has what it takes. You know what I mean? Like we all just get up every morning and, you know, like work really hard to overcome whatever obstacle is in our path. And the thing is that, right, if you have a mission, if you have things you're excited about, right, like you just have so much more energy. Like it's just a shift of focus. It's not about whether you person are in a permanent state of not enough. It's just about like, do I feel this morning like getting up and dealing with the, you know, the boulder that's in my path at this moment.
And the other thing that I'm a big believer in having a career coach if you can, and it doesn't have to spend a lot of money to do that, because if you can get someone who's unbiased, who doesn't know you from any other thing, to look at your resume, to look at your LinkedIn profile, to really talk to you and tease out the things that motivate you and make you different and help you see where you fit into the workplace in a way that you may be stuck in your lane and just trying to replicate old jobs. Don't do that. You know, and this gives you an opportunity to have somebody even talk about what's the financial piece of it. How much do you need to make? Really, that makes a big difference about what kind of work you're looking for. So if you can have an unbiased person, even just for a short period of time, look at you, it can lift you out of that sort of depression you might get into if you've lost a job and you're stuck and no one's responding to your resumes. I do think it's a really good way to reignite. And the other piece of that can be helpful is having maybe you have a little bit of this right now with this community, is having a job search group, you know, having other people in the same position as you, that you can just keep each other accountable to the process, because your friends and family really aren't that interested. They'll ask you over and over again, but they don't want to stick with you every day as you get up and try to figure, you know, this path, the best path, and make a connection. So those are just some simple things. It's not easy to find that great group, but I think right here you've got a nice community that people can, and you might hear about something, you tell somebody else about it if it's not right for you. I mean, everyone exchanges contacts.
Totally. Yeah. I just want to put a disclaimer that I did not seed any of this to Kerry. She's not that familiar with what we offer at Skillcrush, but we are big. We have career coaches for our students, and we do a lot of job search.
I love
group
that
stuff, because everything, for all the reasons that you said. I think that, okay. They're saying that it's frozen. Are you guys back for us? I don't see a problem. So that's concerning to me. Let me know if you can hear us. Let's give it a second. Okay, it looks like it does. Yeah, it's back. Okay, great. What I was going to say, actually, so there is a question in chat that I thought was interesting, which is a question about what do I do if I don't feel like I have a passion, like where it's like hard for someone to identify what their passion is. What would you
So you do have one, but the thing is, people get so terrified that they start peeling back the layers. They're going to find there's nothing there. You know, the truth is, that's why I love the example of going back to maybe early jobs, the first job you did, or, you know, something to kind of remind you of what it is that, you know, I laugh because one of my first jobs when I was in college was selling Avon data door to door. Now I'm a really shy person. And in those days, well, I know it's hard to believe I am, but that's what I was, especially when I was younger. And it forced me to go out and do this. Now, today you don't really have to do that so much. And certainly post pandemic, we're not doing that. But nonetheless, I realized that it was terrifying. But the one thing that I got out of it is once I made that people connection, it was like a high. And I've carried that throughout every single job I've had. I love interviewing people. I love speaking to audiences. I like making that human connection. I can trace that right back to that job. And I'll say, you know, that was a clue to what it is that I really enjoy doing. Or say you love to sail, right? Oh my gosh. I mean, sailing is about making decisions all the time. And you're a project manager. You are, you know, figuring out how to get to A to B with all kinds of changing circumstances, right? And you don't even realize that hobby is a passion, and it is something that can translate to a job.
Totally. I think the probably like the challenge here is just understanding the scope of what could be a passion, right? Like for some people, it might be, like I'll say for myself, for me, I could say that my passion is helping people, especially in marginalized groups, enter higher earning careers, right, in technology. That is one passion of mine for sure. And I think that's a passion that is very like neatly put into a mission statement. But I think that I also have lots of other passions that I think, you know what I mean? Like I also, I love to talk to customers about a product and what they like and don't like about it, right? That doesn't, and I feel like that could apply in a million different contexts that aren't only about job seekers and career transition. So I think maybe it's also just about and yeah, to your point, like it could be project management, like, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't have to be something that like sounds flashy or something like that.
Yeah, I mean it's true. And it's kind of, you need to like be open to ideas and open to saying yes to trying ways of doing things depending on your age. At a certain point, they're linear careers. And I think this is all shaken up at any rate as we move forward with the job market in general. But you used to kind of start on a linear path and you stayed on it. That just doesn't happen anymore. People are changing, as we just mentioned, changing careers more rapidly than ever. It's not just changing jobs. They're transitioning their skills into new fields and new ways of doing things. And maybe it's giving back. Maybe it's just getting a new challenge. But all of it engages you in your work again in a way that it never happened before. And so I see it like a patchwork quilt. Like you might don't get stuck that it has to be perfect, whatever this job is that you're going for. It might only be for, if you get the job, it might only be for a couple of years. I mean, you're weaving things together. You might do this for a while, shift over and do that. You might do a couple of things at the same time. Excuse me.
No problem. No, I agree with you. I mean, I think, right. Like, I think it's like part of reframing, like, okay, let's say that I am undertaking my first career change. I'm 45 years old. I'm, nervous about it. I'm trying to figure out what to do. I'm going to go do an online program like Skillcrush. I'm going to make a change. But what I hear you saying is that like part of the process of sort of coming to terms in a positive way with the opportunity that is now available to you to make a career change is also recognizing that this might not be the only one that you make, right? Like you might do another one in 5 years. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Nothing forever. And we realized with the pandemic how fast everything can change. So, you just got to just take a little bit of a leap and go for it. And then, don't be willing to say, oh yeah, you can adapt it up. I think people get so stuck in wanting everything to be perfect.
Right. And they want to like chart out the whole,
Yeah. And, it's like even in my situation, like I ran my own business for 20 years. I had been in-house before that at a number of publications. And then I was offered an in-house job this January, right? And I was like, oh my goodness. I mean, I really like running my own business, but this was an incredible opportunity. So of course I do what you would do. And the recruiter found me on LinkedIn. And so I went to my sister. That's what we do, right? And so I said, what should I do? And she said, well, Kerry, what's the big deal? It's not going to ruin your career if it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
And frankly, it is working out. But the point is, I was like making it this momentous thing. It doesn't have to be momentous. Just take a chance.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. I think I remember having this conversation once with a friend of mine who was still living in our hometown. This is a friend from high school. And she said to me, like, I'm worried about the risk of, she was actually trying to move to New York, which is where I live. She's like, I'm worried about the risk of moving to New York and hating it. And I'm like, of course it's a risk. You know what I mean? That's a legitimate concern. However, I was like, but there's also a risk, like to not doing it, making a change, right? To not taking a leap. Like that's a risk too, right? That you're risking not having the benefit of, you know what I mean? Like there's like the negative risk and there's also the risk of not getting the positive. So,
yep. And so, I think being nimble is important. And I want to go back a little bit to the education piece we talked about earlier. Is what I love about learning new things, learning new skills or whatever, is that every time you learn something new, even if it's not directly related to your job or your job search or what you're hoping to do, it changes the way you think. It empowers you in a way that you start seeing the world differently. And you develop this resilience because you go from being a beginner not knowing anything about a subject,
Yes.
to learning about the subject. And it's like
Yeah.
rhythm that we all have. Even if you go like take it out the next step to when you start a new job, you're learning new things and you think it's never going to be natural to you. And then it becomes that way. And so I
Yeah.
think anytime you can add new skills, it just fires up your brain and it gets you re-engaged in the world.
Yes,
And
and comfortable with that. I love that so much. And it's funny you say that because we talk about this a lot. We talk about the 4 stages of learning, and how you sort of start off being like, it's so easy. This is no big deal. That's because you don't know. And then you learn how much you don't know. And then you're like, oh God, it's horrible. And then you slowly start to learn the skill, you know what I mean? And then you get sort of better and better to the point of unconscious incompetence, as they say. But it's funny you say that because I had a second child a little over a year ago, and I had to say that to myself because I had gotten used to having one child and being competent, and then all of a sudden I had a second one in the mix, and I was like completely overwhelmed, and like, I mean, it felt like complete chaos, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I kept saying to myself, like, Adda, you're in the conscious incompetence phase of this, and it's going to get easier over time. So it helps beyond just career stuff, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I think learning something that's completely unrelated to your career can give you the same kind of experience of opening you up to doing this beginner, everything's new and chaotic, to then it hits its pace, it hits its step. So I think that's just important to remind ourselves. And the other piece of it is, and you guys probably all talk about this in your other sessions, but if you're really, really stuck, get out of your head and into the world, go volunteer somewhere. Even if it's virtual volunteering, but if you can be in person, that's fabulous. But it's kind of, first of all, you're working with hopefully a nonprofit that you believe in their mission, but you're using your skills. So skill-based volunteering, but it's networking. You never know who you're going to meet there that might know of something, or you might actually end up working there. So you just never know. And so I think it's an important thing not to ever let yourself feel stuck. So sign up for a course, go and volunteer. It helps with the job seeking process. It really does.
Yeah, I also want to say, like, back to this question of passion, and you're talking about mission, and I feel like you are talking about like nonprofits and volunteering and stuff. I mean, I think that I don't think Kerry and I are not saying that everyone needs to go work at a nonprofit, or you know what I mean, whatever.
No.
But I do think it's on point, because I know that, like, for our students, job fulfillment is actually something that they value over, like, obviously they have certain salary desires, but we hear that over and over again. What they're looking for is job fulfillment. And I think that's really common among career changers. Like, I think that, like, you're not usually, when you're a career changer, like, you're not necessarily, some people are doing it because they're not making enough in that career. That's, you know what I mean? And that's obviously important and valid, and we totally see you and hear you and want to support you. But for a lot of people, it's about, yes, I would like to make more money, but more importantly, I want to feel engaged in my work. I want to feel like I'm moving forward, like there's growth potential for me, et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah, and I think when I talk to workers today coming out of the pandemic, although I say, and I'm a big believer in remote work, because that's what I do and that's what I've done for years. But the point is, having the ability, what people really want, they don't care as much about where they work, whether they have to be in an office or working remotely. They care when they work. We all want flexibility. We want to be treated like grown-ups. We want to have the autonomy we have care. I mean, a lot of us have caregiving duties, whether it's for children or aging parents or partners or whatever it is. That's one piece of it. There's plenty of other things that take up our time, but we've realized coming out of the pandemic that we want a full life. We want to embrace our world and make time for things. And so work is a huge part of it, obviously, and it matters what you get paid. It matters that you like what you do, but it also matters that you have control of your time. And so that's something that I think is a huge thing that employers are paying attention to, and hopefully more so, because it's about flexibility.
Yeah. I saw someone say remote flexibility is the dream. Okay. I actually would love to go back to, you shared a little bit with me ahead of time your story, or about sort of your process of transitioning to your new role. And I actually think that experience could be really illuminating for people who are listening. So do you mind sharing a little bit about what you're talking about? And this is, I guess, specifically around this question of how do I manage, or what sparked this discussion was, what do I do if my boss is way younger than me?
Yeah. So this is the great thing. So I am now a senior columnist at Yahoo Finance, and I'm an on-air expert for them. And it is fabulous. I absolutely love it. And I can still do my speaking and write my books and all that good stuff. But so my editor or my manager is a couple of decades younger than me, right? And she is absolutely fantastic. I mean, it's so energizing. I can't even explain to you how much I enjoy working with her. She's so smart. She values me. She respects me. I respect her back. It's this mutual respect. That's the key to the multiple, having different generations working together, or having, an older, a younger boss and a more experienced worker, we'll say. And so that to me, I embraced that, and so did she. And we've never even discussed it. And I frankly don't even know how old she is exactly. But but
you're like indistinguishably younger.
Yes. But anyway, but the key thing, there was one tripping point, is that she it came down to communication, right? Now I've been writing about this forever for workers, saying older workers particularly, this is a big issue, it's respect, it's communication. But communication, I didn't realize till it happened to me, because I would send her in the first, couple of weeks, I would send her emails or reach out by phone or I text, and I was getting no response, really, very minimal. And I thought, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Why is I was feeling maybe resentful, upset. I couldn't figure out. And then I realized that they have a company, everyone at Yahoo communicates via Slack. So I had never worked on Slack before. I knew that I knew about Slack, obviously. I mean, from her, and we had been communicating, but I didn't realize that was the way she preferred to communicate. Yes. So I simply needed to have had that conversation. I didn't do it. Once I realized it, we've never had another issue. It's instant. I mean, the Slack works like that. It's not a problem at all. But for me, I got all tripped up at first. The other thing, technology wise, is that, I write. I'm a writer. I love to write. That is my passion, writing. But I write in Word, right? And so she said, well, you know what, Kerry, we write in Google Docs. And I said, oh, well, great. Well, I'll just send you the stuff in Word. And she's like, no, you're not going to do that. You don't get it. We work in Google Docs.
And I was no, this is not an optional. Yeah.
I was like, oh, shoot. So I realized I had a good friend who had told me about a year or so ago, he had switched to Google Docs and loved it. So I immediately emailed him, and I'm like, Mark, I need help. So he said, quick, screen share. So he did this whole tutorial with me, just the two of us, and went over how it all works. And it's like, Kerry, if you have any questions, just shoot me, ping me. I'll help you again. Or guess what, Kerry, you can Google it. And so you know what? I never mentioned it. And now, maybe they'll hear this and they'll know, but I never mentioned the issue. And I simply made the adjustment. And it took me a little bit longer sometimes to get things done. But now it's second nature. A couple months later, I'm down the road. I do it, just not a problem. But I did. And that was something I always would say when I spoke to older workers, or I was counseling them. I'd say, like, you can't be stuck in your ways. You have to be willing to learn new ways of doing things. And here I was, like myself, stuck in my way, wanting to do it. So it was really fun to go like, aha, this is what that's all about.
That's so funny. I love that. Yeah. And I think, something I will say this for the audience, like something I had shared with Kerry when she told me the story was that, this is something we think a lot about when we have, in the way that we've constructed our program, is making sure that obviously we teach technical skills, but we also want to make sure that our students learn how to work in sort of the contemporary modes of working, which is always changing also. But yeah, are they comfortable on Zoom? Are they good with Google Docs? Very important. And then, are they familiar with Slack, which are three, I think, sort of cornerstones of the modern remote workplace.
One other point I want to make about the job search, especially for your community that is, over 40 or what have you, but it could be true when you're younger too. But if there's this feeling that you think the hiring manager or someone thinks you might be stuck in your ways, or you might be too old to make this career transition, whatever it is, use the word curious. I'm curious about how this works. You want to show that you've done your homework on the company, you understand what they do, what their challenges in the industry are. But that word curious, it's a very subtle way of showing not only your enthusiasm, but your willingness to learn, your willingness to open yourself up to learning new things. And that goes a long way to fighting, I think, an ageist attitude in the hiring process.
Yeah, I mean, this actually brings me to a really good question for you, which is, something that we think about a lot at Skillcrush is, how do sort of these systems marginalize people, right? And so we can all agree, I think, that ageism is real in the workforce. And it can be significant. And I think it tends to compound, is my understanding, with other forms of marginalization. So women tend to experience it more, and people of color, and certainly, let's not even start talking about people with disabilities in terms of the challenges that they face in the workforce. But so given that, and I always don't want to put the responsibility on the individual to fight what is ultimately a systemic issue, right? But nonetheless, what do we do? Let's say I'm 50 and I'm worried that I'm going to be met with ageism. So you're saying I should, try to make sure that it's clear. One of the common ageist sort of stereotypes is that people who are older are stuck in their ways and not willing to learn new skills. Obviously, you want to demonstrate that that's not the case. What are other sorts of things that you are seeing people deal with that you think that, are compatible realistically?
Yeah. Well, it's not just the workplace, it's our entire culture. And the point is, and women, as you mentioned before, particularly, not only have ageism, they have lookism. It's how you look. If you look, I often will have women, and mostly it is women who will ask me, should I dye my hair? Should I get Botox? Whatever. And I'm always like, sure, if that's what you want to do. But I think the most important thing you can do to fight ageism from a physical standpoint is to get physically fit. I mean, if you can have some sort of workout program, whether it's walking a couple of times a week, whether it's definitely eating with an eye to nutrition, whether it's swimming, whatever it is you can do, when you're physically fit, people, they want to be on your team. They want you to be on their team. They don't know what it is about you, but you have this positivity, this can-do attitude that comes from being fit and physically fit. And I'm not making this up. This is really true. It is the simplest thing you can do to fight ageism, is to get yourself really in good shape. And people it's this energy that it's hard to explain, but it's subliminal, but it works. And I think that's important. I also think an important thing that people can do for themselves is, I have Kerry's fitness program is physical fitness, spiritual fitness, and financial fitness. So if you can get financially fit in any way, and this isn't so much about the ageism issue, but if you can do a budget and get as lean and mean as you can, it opens up possibilities for the kind of jobs you can say yes to. It makes you nimble. You're not stuck at a certain salary that you have to pay the rent or the mortgage or what have you. So if there's anything you can do, especially if you're making a career transition where it's possible that you might not make as much as you did in your previous career initially, if you can be financially fit, this is going to, it will, debt is the biggest dream killer. So if you can pay down some of those debts, anything you can do to be lean and mean is important. And the spiritual fitness goes into the ageism in a way because, and by that, I mean, it's not religion. I mean, it's yoga, Tai Chi, I walk my dog, whatever it is that you can center you, because the job search process is super stressful. And if you can, and if you're fighting ageism in the workplace too, if you have a quiet space where you can go to that gives you that ballast, that sort of, okay, this is, center you. It's really important. So those three things are super helpful.
Yeah, I think there's a good comment here made by one of our audience members, Jade, and she's talking about sort of, the stigmatization of overweight people and fat people face in our culture. So how do you think about that? Obviously, I guess I am a big believer in the fat liberation movement, right? And the fact that just like ageism is a major sort of a major marginalization, that people who are deemed fat or overweight in our culture are also marginalized. So how do you, I guess I just want to be careful that we're not suggesting that everyone needs to be thin in order to.
No, when I say fit, I mean in the way that give you energy, to be healthy, to have that spark about you. It doesn't have anything to do with the weight issue. It has to do with having energy. And
so really, it's just about finding, and for people obviously who have certain different disabilities, going for a run is maybe not the thing that is going to give that to them.
Absolutely not. No. But it's having, and it also is having that space that you give yourself to, balance your life. And so that re-energizes you, and giving yourself permission not to get, to take time to do things for you, for yourself. But I do think those are important things. I think ageism in particular is so prevalent, but the things that you can do is really making sure that you're willing to try new ways of doing things, that you're willing. What has happened is, coming out of the pandemic, is I find that a lot of people who even retired and then unretired, and many people did because of inflation and all these other reasons, the stock market being crazy, employers, it's been a very tight labor market, right? Two jobs for everyone looking. So if you have the skills, if you can step in and do the job right now, you are finding work. I mean, I think that's probably one reason why I was offered the position at Yahoo Finance, is because I simply could start the job. I knew what to do, and they didn't have to train me. They didn't have to do anything to prepare me for that job. And so, especially experienced workers, if you can showcase that ability to seamlessly be able to step in without a lot of hand-holding, that's a big benefit.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I think, the sort of message complexity that I always want to sort of impart in these conversations is that, that both, being like ageism and marginalization by age or, weight or gender or race or whatever, those things are real and they're really problematic and they are very hard for an individual to combat. And also there are opportunities out there. There are places out there that are not going to, discriminate against you. There is opportunity. You also are amazing and capable, and you have a future and you have opportunity, and we want to help you to realize, the career dreams that you have, and that's totally possible.
But I think the remote work, the upsurge in remote work has gone a long way to addressing these issues, right? I mean, for workers with disability, any of these issues that a workplace can be, whether it's not ergonomically set up for you, whether commute is difficult, whether just the culture can be toxic, if you have issues that make you seem marginalized in some way, being able to work remotely just really levels the playing field, doesn't it? I mean, I think it has done. And I think the statistics are showing that jobs have improved, particularly in the arena of disabilities, because of the opportunity to.
They have. I just wrote about that and I think it's a beautiful thing, because I think I quoted Fannie Lou Hamer, which is none of us are free until everybody's free, right? And I think that if you look at sort of who in the workforce is in some, it's hard. I don't want to pit any marginalized group against each other, but by a percentage, adults with disabilities have the lowest rate of employment in the workforce. And, seeing that go up because of remote work, I think is a huge positive change.
Yeah. It's tremendous. And I think it will continue to be so, because the technology has gotten to the point where people can, very seamlessly work from remote locations without it being feeling really out of step with the workplace, and employers get it. I mean, they're looking for talent. And if you can, and it's all about them, right? It's not about you and your issue. It's really about, they only care about how to improve the business and how to make themselves more profitable or do what it is they need, their mission is. So anything you can do, if you can provide value to them. I mean, the ability to work remotely is really allowing them to tap great, value for employees that can do that for them. It opens the door for them as well.
I want to take a question that was submitted ahead of time that I thought was worth addressing. I feel like maybe we haven't addressed super directly, which is how to handle absences, like breaks in your career. So a lot of women especially have this experience of maybe taking time off to take care of their children, or, I know that a lot of people are in what they're calling a sandwich generation. So people who are both taking care of children and their parents. How have you coached, or what have you seen to be effective in terms of sort of explaining why there's maybe a 10 or 15-year gap or whatever in your resume?
Yeah, I think it's important that maybe it's a gap in your working life, but it's certainly not a gap in your life. So what you have to really learn to do is take a little time and go back and say, okay, what were some of the things I was doing during this period, and what skills were involved there? Like, for example, when I was a caregiver for my mom during the pandemic, and she's 92, dementia. I was hanging by a thread, but I tell you, I don't regret it for a minute. It was great. But when I think about the kind of work I was doing for her, is I was a financial manager. I was a patient advocate. I was, a musical director, because we had to sing show tunes all the time. But you can tell a story. And what employers want is your car story. They want the challenge, the action, the result. So if you can apply that to what you were doing during your gap, whether it's raising children, whether it's caring for aging adults, whether it's, whatever, maybe you had an illness that took you out, but whatever you were doing something, whether perhaps it was volunteer basis, but it may just have been simply family demands and issues or your own personal care that you had to take a break for. But you find a story there, find something, your narrative, you own your story. So just take it to it. And also, because you want to reposition some of those things in business terms, right? Like I kind of just did it right there, but and a coach can often help you figure out how to do that. But it's important to, and I like LinkedIn profiles and things, because you can put your volunteer time, what you've done, and often someone who's a hiring manager might actually relate to that. Say, oh, you're interested in rescuing animals or whatever it is. I do too. Or, you make a connection in a different way with somebody when you highlight some of these outside of work activities that you took time to do.
Totally. Yeah. And I think, just to reinforce what you're saying too, like it is often hard to be able to have the perspective to do this for yourself. So don't equate you not being sure how to position that period of your life in this context as an indication that there isn't opportunity to position it. Like I think that we're often our worst sort of judges in that regard, and I just want to normalize that everybody needs and can benefit from, to Kerry's point, like coaching or perspective from somebody else. Like, I think we often just, I don't know. I mean, I don't have this problem because I'm totally sold on like getting a coach and doing all those things. It's been such an important part of my life, frankly. So at this point, like you've got me, but I think for a lot of people, there's a lot of stigma, right? Like there's this feeling of, I should be able to do this on my own. If I had my SHIT together, I would not have this problem, et cetera. But like the reality is that the people, and this is something I've seen time and again, having met people who are extremely successful, right? They all have a ton of support is what I have learned, so it's not available to everybody in every situation, but don't see it as like a weakness that you would need it. Everybody needs it.
Oh, not at all. And you need to, no matter what, gap you might have had, you need to reach out to people and ask them for advice. Ask them, if they're working in a field that interests you, find out, how did they get that job? What do they love about it? Where are some of the opportunities in that area? These are not looking for a job from this person. This is simply just having a dialogue. People love to talk about their work, and they're very proud of what they do. So if you can just don't take too much of their time, but reach out and do that. I always say that, networking is just one letter away from not working. So you have to push yourself. I know it's hard, but just push yourself to do that. It's a call, it's a Zoom call, whatever it might be, or, and I'm not saying volunteering in this sense for a nonprofit, but you can volunteer somewhere just to lend a hand to do things. If there's, kind of work that interests you, see if you can apprentice or somehow, just step in and job shadow somebody for a while. It sounds silly, but it's not, because then you get a sense of what it's like on a day-to-day, sort of a day-to-day world of doing it. But also it might not be but one thing might lead to another. So definitely always be reaching to that next person. And one example I have of somebody who he transitioned from doing public relations to teaching English as a second language, but he had done all the work, the certificates and everything, but he couldn't find a job. So he was talking to his son, had his friend over for dinner one night, and he's talking to the guy, said, Mr. So-and-so, what are you up to? And he goes, oh, actually, I'm looking for a job. This is what I'm doing. And the kid said, oh, my mom can help you. And so he connected him to his mother. And like, he would never have thought. And you know what? He found a job, not from her, but she connected him to somebody else. So it's like being willing to just throw it out there.
Yeah. I mean, I think, right. Like, I feel like it's like, if we were to boil down everything we've discussed in this conversation, I feel like it's largely like having compassion for yourself and recognizing that it's like normal and positive it's normal to not know, insert anything basically. And there's so much opportunity for learning, and it's necessary to rely on community and other people and outside resources to learn those things.
And it's connecting the dots. It's like, what do you love to do? What are the fun things you like to do for hobbies? Or, those first jobs we talked about, or what were the bright lights of caregiving? I mean, there's little pieces of information and clues to who you are and what makes you stand out as a candidate for a job in all of aspects of our life. It's just, and you might just write some of these things down at night, remind yourself each day of the positive things, the positive interactions you had, or, think about those things that, that brought happiness to you. And it sounds corny, but it really does lead you to find what it is you're seeking. And it comes through when you're interviewing and so forth as well, that enthusiasm for it. And I also encourage people not to interview not to send resumes like crazy, and especially like crazy to job boards. People hire people they know, or people they know. It really is the old fashioned way. So it comes right back down to that.
Kerry, it's like I scripted you.
Exactly what it really does come down to your network. So, I say, pick 10 or 12 places you would really like to work, not who want you to work for them, but where you would like to work. That's a great position to start your job search with.
Awesome. Well, we are basically at time. I would love, do you any parting wisdom, words, thoughts, encouragements?
Yeah.
I guess also, where can people find you and all of that good stuff?
Sure. Kerry Hannon, KerryHannon.com is my website. I'm on Twitter at Kerry Hannon, LinkedIn. You can find me. Happy to connect, answer any more questions, do a deeper dive. But, I think your message is fabulous, because it really is believing in yourself. It's taking your time to do the homework. It's not being scattershot about things. It's reaching out and asking for help, which is so hard for most of us to do. And all of those elements, everything's a process. And particularly if you're changing careers, if you're making a transition, believe me, this does not happen overnight. This is a process. It's adding the pieces of education you might need. It's meeting the people you might need. It's getting financially prepared to make that switch. So it takes time. And some people, do it in a snap of a fingers. But trust me. And also, when we talked about nothing always being forever, I wrote a book a number of years ago called What's Next? Follow Your Passion and Find Your Dream Job. When I went back and interviewed those people when it became a paperback, I found a third of the people had moved on to different things. Okay. So, loosen up a little bit, just take a chance and go for it, because you never know where a path might lead you.
I'm like, Kerry, I look forward to following up with you and finding you doing something completely different.
Look for my next book, maybe,
Yeah, exactly. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. It was such a pleasure. And yeah, I look forward to being in touch, and I hope everyone enjoyed it. And please, if you have any questions, follow up with Kerry, follow up with us. We're always here, hello@skillcrush.com. We hope that if you're not already a student, you'll come and join us in our crazy community of, forever learners. And I just hope everyone has a wonderful Thursday, Friday, and weekend. All right. Thank you so much, Kerry.
Thanks.
Bye.